Hello again everyone, and welcome to my next video. Today I present you the continuation of Rabbi Gestetner's series of refutations to the second Collive video, False Rabbis, which I have linked for you below, which was put out by Yosef Feigelstock and Kahan. They are the ones among others who hurl the great calumny of Gett Abuse against Jewish men. I am just going to let you know that today's installment is going to be one of the more technical videos I have done, in that I will be concentrating mostly on the critical fundamentals of halacha related to moasolai, or he is repulsive to me, which is the most common complaint seen in divorces today. For those of you that are interested in understanding how we paskin or rule today in halacha related to divorce, then this is the video you must watch. Rabbi Gestetner not only explains halacha and reveals to us the fake rabbis' distortions and manipulations in halacha, but also cites the exact poskim and their reference points to back up his refutations. Now, as a side note, whenever Rabbi Gestetner refers to a posik or poskim, he's referring to the accepted, authentic rabbinic sages who have handed down halachic rulings in matters of divorce up until the time of the Chazon Ish. No one in the past 70 years has the right to alter or modify in any way the halachic rulings of the great sages that preceded them. There is a rule in halacha that states, Gadol mimenu b'chachma uveminyan. This means that no generation has a right to modify or alter an accepted halacha unless that generation's rabbis are greater in knowledge and in number from the previous generation. Our rabbis today are neither greater in number nor in knowledge of halacha, and therefore they most certainly cannot change the halacha at their whim. The charlatan rabbis of today are quick to dismiss the halachic rulings of the great sages from previous generations, and instead will quote a modern-day reformer rabbi as their source. Additionally, Rabbi Gestetner does not base the halacha on only one or two poskim, as the crack rabbis like to do. Their behavior is clearly against halacha, and the Ramah in Choshen Mishpat 25, Seif 2, says about this that any dayan or rabbi that rules according to the minority is considered a dayan sheker, a fraud who reforms the Torah. Nowadays, there is no shortage of fraudulent rabbis who have gone ahead and changed halacha, but Rabbi Gestetner employs the concept of roiv minyan ubinyan, which means that he relies on the halacha based on the majority of expert poskim. Now, you all must have heard that this week we lost the rabbinic leader of the generation, Rabbi Chaim kanievsky, zecher tzaddik levracha. In the next coming weeks, many stories will certainly be told about his righteousness and his devotion to Torah and Klal Yisrael, but I will share with you today one of those stories, something I'm sure that the general public is unaware of. The story was told to me by a very reliable source that highlights Reb Chaim's devotion to strict halacha. Reb Chaim was unwavering and unapologetic when it came to Torah and mitzvahs. The story goes on that there was a man from Flatbush, New York, who was going through a divorce, and as usually happens in these cases, the wife litigated against him in a secular court against halacha, and ended up taking the children along with all of his assets. This husband happened to know one of Reb Chaim's chavrusas, or learning partners. He asked this chavrusa to get Reb Chaim's opinion about what he should do in such a case. Reb Chaim instructed his chavrusa to inform this man that he should go ahead and get remarried. What he meant by that was that he does not need to issue a get to his wife until she settles with him according to halacha. But his pulpit rabbi, the one who would have officiated at the wedding, balked at this proposal. He said that he couldn't officiate at his wedding because he wouldn't feel comfortable doing so. So the pulpit rabbi said to the husband, "Listen, I happen to be traveling to Israel in the next few weeks, so would you mind coming with me so we can both ask Reb Chaim about this and hear the answer for ourselves?" They entered Reb Chaim's room just as he was learning Torah with one of his sons, and they asked him this very question in person. Sure enough, Reb Chaim answered that he should go ahead and get married. At that point, Reb Chaim's son asked his father in bewilderment, "How can we allow this man to remarry without a get?" Reb Chaim answered, "Why not? That is the halacha in such a case." The husband then said to Reb Chaim that this rabbi was afraid to officiate at his remarriage. So Rabbi Chaim stated that he was prepared to be the Masada Kedushin himself. We can conclude from this story that Rabbi Chaim was very clear about his ruling and not afraid to state the Torah truth. In fact, I will link for you below a similar ruling from Rabbi Chaim, indicating that his father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Zechet Tzadik Levracha, ruled that a get procured with coercion, such as the ones that the shameful Rabbanut procures on a daily basis using their infamous tzav ikuv, is invalid. And any woman remarrying with such a get is sinning with Eishes ish, with any offspring born through such remarriage being considered a mamzer. A tzav ikuv, by the way, or stay of exit, is an Israeli court order which is used by the rabbinate to prevent a man from exiting the country until he issues a get. Regarding a coerced get, Reb Chaim was resolute in forbidding it. He ends his letter with the following words: I hereby sign my name to this letter in order to save an oppressed man from his oppressors. This is who Reb Chaim was, a true leader of the Jewish people who would not waver even an inch in halacha, not even in the face of feminism or political expediency. He was only afraid of Hashem and nobody else. Woe to our generation that has lost such a leader of the Torah. The ignorant and unlearned public are falling prey to our corrupt rabbis and dayanim, and will hopefully learn from this refutation letter of Rabbi Gestetner the authentic halochos of Jewish divorce, and not allow our wayward rabbis to blindly guide them into believing their distorted and heretical viewpoints. So now, I will now present to you the truth about how Rabbi Gestetner illustrates to us how these no good rabbis have duped the public into believing that any get refuser can be shamed, coerced, and vilified into forcibly extracting a get from him. I have already explained in my past videos that even the terms get refuser or aguna have been hijacked by the fake rabbis in order to garner your support and sympathy for these frauds, who in many instances are being portrayed as victims, yet in reality they are considered rebellious women according to halacha, or a moredis. So without further ado, I bring to you Rabbi Gestetner's refutation to statement number 5. At approximately the 16-minute and 18-second mark, Feigelstock mentions the Rambam in relation to the din of moasalai, quoting him that we can coerce a get. He then brings the opinion of the Rosh, who disagrees with the Rambam and forbids coercion. Feigelstock goes on to state that the Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rosh that we cannot force a get. He then states that Rabbeinu Tam comes and makes a compromise, in that although we don't coerce a get, we can apply halochos. And at the 21-minute mark, Feigelstock mentions again that this is how the Ramah paskins in the case of moasalai, and that no one disagrees with the Ramah. Let us listen now to Feigelstock's halachic distortions, manipulations, and heresy in his own words.
So the Rambam goes on top of that in Eishes Perikid Dalet, and he says a woman that doesn't want to sleep with her husband, and you ask her why doesn't she want with her husband, she says ma'astihu. She says I can't stand him. It's a very interesting thing. The also the Lashon Shulchan Aruch says moasalai. He is, I can't stand him. He is foul. He's repulsive. That means there's a mitzvah not to hate. You're not allowed to say to another Jew, I hate you. It might happen in reality, but so here we're talking about she doesn't hate him, but she says, I can't stand you. It's just like you had a fig fall on the floor and exploded on the floor and say nothing happened to it. You can eat it. But you can't tolerate that. And that's what she's saying. She can't tolerate this man. That's the definition of the Shulchan Aruch. So the Rambam says in this case, where she says, Ma'astil, I can't tolerate this man, and I can't sleep with him, yeah? We force him to give a get, because our women are not captured to be with the man they don't want against their will. And that's the Rambam Paskin. If a man or a woman, it will be in both cases, if they would say, I can't stand this relation, I cannot sleep with this person with my will, the marriage is over. And a get could be forced. Comes the Rosh, and the Rosh says, and this is the halacha in Shulchan Aruch, that a get cannot be forced in such a case. So the argument of the Rambam that our girls are not forced into a marriage against their will is a very strong argument of the Rambam. And what are we going to do? We're going to leave our girls stuck in a marriage that's not working, or make her sleep with a man that she can't stand him, she cannot support? So came Rabbeinu Tam, and he says, okay, we're going to be choshesh to the Shittas HaRosh, yeah? And we're going to permit not to beat him up, but to give him a halochos to Rabbeinu Tam. In other words, we're going to put social pressure, and Rabbeinu Tam says, we're not going to put him a chayrim, but we could give a decree on all the Yidden not to do business, not to do a favor with him, not to do milah to his children, not to bury his dead till he'll give a get. And the Shulchan Aruch even amplifies that. And anything what the Bezdin sees that they could decree shall be done. And the concept, why is that not considered a get musa? There are two answers, and I'm going to only apply to one of them. When a person is coming to do business, I have no obligation to sell him. I have no obligation to buy from him. If I want to, I could do it. So he cannot demand that we sell to him or we buy to him. So Bezdin can give a decree, nobody should buy or sell with him, because we don't owe him that. Mashiach came to take out $100,000 his pocket and say, if you don't give a get, that will take away from you $100,000. That will be a get musa according to some opinions, not to all. So, taking away something that he cannot demand, or similar, there's no obligation to give him an aliyah. If we say don't give him an aliyah in shul, he cannot claim you have to give me an aliyah. We don't want to.
Is this widely accepted, or is this as we're being told at Das Yachid? There are halakhos to Rabbeinu Tam. Does anyone not hold of them?
It's a sif from Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Chaf Aleph. B'chol makom she'en koifim b'shoitim ein menalin oiseh. B'chol makom yochaylim ligzar akol Yisrael shelo lasu l'shum tova alisa litni imoy shara dura b'shen Rabbeinu Tam. Olam haba v'lekovrei ad shegarish miyam and zei. B'chol chumra sheyitze Bezdin yochayl nachmer v'chai gavne. B'vad shelo yanu do oiseh. Just a straight Ramah without any arguments.
I will now explain what these halochos of Rabbeinu Tam actually mean. But first, I need to remind you that there are three categories in Jewish divorce. Category number one, koifin legarish. These are the rare cases, and I emphasize rare, where a bezdin can coerce a get and can apply direct coercive measures. There are only 5 cases where we can coerce a get, and they are all illustrated in Masechet Ksuvos 77a and also in Even HaEzer 154. All the Rishonim are in agreement that we cannot add more cases of get coercion onto the short list of 5 cases. And even in cases that appear more severe in nature, we cannot rule that such a get can be coerced. The sources that state this are Tosfos in Masechet Ksuvos 70a, Divrei HaMaschil Yoitzi, the Rashba Chelek 1, Siman 572, the Tshuvas Harosh Klal 43 Siman 3, and the Shulchan Aruch Even HaEzer Siman 154 Seif 5. However, all of this has been abused by modern day rabbis. Category number 2. Chayev legarish avol ein koifin. These are cases where Bezdin can say to a man that he must give a get, and yet they cannot overtly coerce him. One such example is a woman who complains immediately after being married that her husband cannot function physically in matters of marital relations. If the man admits to this, then he's asked to divorce his wife. In such a case, if he refuses, the Ramo allowed the halochos, which means that we withhold certain favors from him, such as lending him money, but we're still not allowed to apply overt coercive measures. But these halochos of Rabbeinu Tam have been abused by the heretic rabbis in that they implemented all sorts of sanctions that were not allowed by Rabbeinu Tam. For example, these phony rabbis publicly humiliate a man and even sanction his family, all of which were prohibited by Rabbeinu Tam. You see, Rabbeinu Tam only instituted his halochos to be a menias toiva, which means we, the public, remove ourselves from him, in that we don't help him or do him any favors, but by openly pushing him away with such things as seruvim, public humiliation, and other sanctions, it now turns these actions into overtly coercive ones, which not only invalidate the get, but also cause additional sins of malbim pnei chavera barabim, which means that someone who publicly shames a fellow Jew loses his portion in the world to come. And the last category is category number 3, which is poter legarish. This is the most applicable category today, and it simply means that a man does not have to divorce his wife. Most divorces today fall into this third category because they are characterized as moasolai, which, as we will see from Rabbi Gestetner's statement, we do not apply the halochos of Rabbeinu Tam. So with this introduction, we can now begin to explain Rabbi Gestetner's refutation of statements made by Feigelstock and Kahan. Rabbi Gestetner states that Feigelstock's statements are completely incoherent and distorted. Feigelstock makes it appear that the Rambam only has one Rishon who disagrees with him, namely the Rosh, which is false statement. That is because Rabbeinu Tam, the innovator of the halochos, is the main Rishon who disputes the Rambam as seen in Sefer Yasher and in Tosfos in Masechet Ksuvos and also several other places in Shas. For all of the exact citations, please refer to Rabbi Gestetner's response in Hebrew, which I have linked in the description box below. Almost all the Rishonim, at least 40 of them in number, have agreed with Rabbeinu Tam prohibiting any coercive measures in the cases of moasolai, which pertain to most divorce cases today, as I have stated above. We also see that the Ramban, with an N at the end, not an M, states that the Rabbeinu Tam's opinion is hard to disagree with because he strongly supports his positions from many sources in Shas. And even the Magid Mishnah, who usually defends the Rambam's halachic positions, disagrees with the Rambam's position on moasolai. But wait, we are not finished yet. We also have the Ritva, Rashba, Maharam, Mordechai, Ran, and many others, including the Rosh, who all write very sharply against the Rambam and declare that it is prohibited to apply coercive measures in the cases of moasolai. And this is how the Shulchan Aruch in Even HaEzer 77 paskins the halacha of moasolai. Furthermore, Rabbi Gestetner says that in his refutation of Collive video number 1, which I will link for you below, in paragraph 23, he already mentioned that even in the cities that customarily followed the Rambam's rulings prior to the publication of the Shulchan Aruch, they have all decided to not follow the Rambam's ruling in the case of moasolai due to the severe risks associated with the sins of Eishes Ish. In addition to that, these Rishonim simply could not understand how the Rambam could rule in such a way when in so many places in Shas, it appears that the logical conclusion and ruling of moasolai is in direct opposition to the Rambam's opinion. Therefore, it becomes obvious that we have to follow the decision of the Ramah that the halochos are only allowed where the husband is chayev legarish min hadin according to the poskim. Therefore, even if a bezdin today decides on their own that the husband is chayiv legarish in a case of mosalai, this itself already invalidates a get. And the halochos imposed become a second reason to invalidate the get. So when the Ramah permitted using the halochos within the allowed parameters as stated further on, he did not institute them as a sort of compromise as Feigelstock stated, but rather the Ramah permitted the halochos of Rabbeinu Tam only in the cases that I mentioned above, which are within the allowed criteria that contain non-aggressive sanctions that are not considered force, such as not lending him money or conducting any business transactions with him. But bear in mind, these halochos were only in practice until the days of the Mahari ben Lev, after which point they became forbidden practice, as Rabbi Gestetner will bring down later in paragraph 13. Let me repeat that again. Today, we don't practice these halochos, even in cases of chayiv legarish, and not even menias tova. So it comes out that menias tova today is considered kefiya, or plain coercion. So when Feigelstock says that it is permissible to use the halochos in Moas Salai, the most prevalent divorce situation today, and that this halacha is accepted by everyone, is nothing but heresy, lunacy, and a big fat lie. Because there isn't even one authentic posek that allows halochos in a case of Moas Salai. And since Feigelstock proclaimed publicly in the Collive video that it is allowed, he's causing the public to stumble on the sins of Mabim Pnei Chavera Barabim, or shaming a Jew in public, which is akin to murder, along with the sins of Eishes Ishim Mamzerim. Rabbi Gestetner says that these statements from Feigelstock are so serious that it is forbidden to remain silent to such a grave desecration of halacha. He goes on to state that Feigelstock's statement is refuted through 8 rationales. While these rationales are like building blocks, together forming an imposing structure of halacha, each individual rationale is strong enough to stand upon its own merit. So therefore, if these modern-day heretic rabbis apply coercive measures in matters of gittin, it can only be explained by their total disregard for authentic halacha. Their behavior is a direct affront to our holy Torah and to the sages that preceded them, along with their endorsements of serious sins which are associated with these coerced gittin. And that's what makes them apikorsim. And now, I will begin to present to you Rabbi Gestetner's 8 rationales, starting with the first 3. Rationale number 1. When laughing Feigelstock made statements such as, "We won't tolerate such abuse," or "We won't allow this to happen in our communities," he was essentially sanctioning the use of public humiliation as if it were allowed. He purposefully avoids mentioning that public humiliation is not allowed by the halochos of Rabbeinu Tam, thereby indirectly signaling to the public at large that public shaming is common practice associated with the halochos. But you see, Rabbeinu Tam never allowed public shaming, and in fact is considered blanket coercion, no different than hitting the person with a blunt object, and therefore public humiliation will invalidate the get. This fact that shaming someone is considered frank coercion is cited by many poskim, including Rashba, Rashbash, Ridvaz, Beis Yosef, Ramah, Berach Yitzchok, Hagam Shaul, Betzel HaKesef, Chazon Ish. For a complete list of precise citations, I refer you to Rabbi Gestetner's Collive 1 refutation letter, numbered 5028a, in paragraph 6. Even Rabbeinu Tam himself, in his Sefer HaYashar, Siman 77, states specifically that the slightest pressure on a man, the mere mentioning to a man that he must give a get, is considered outright coercion, invalidating the get. So how does Feigelstock have the audacity to kasher a get, procured through public humiliation, a severe form of coercion, when clearly Rabbeinu Tam's halochos consist only of menias tova, refraining from doing certain favors only and not public humiliation? And by the way, when Foolish Shtick mentions the Maharik, he once again lies when he says that you don't give the man an aliyah to the Sefer Torah, when the Maharik himself states just the opposite, that not giving an aliyah is tantamount to public humiliation and is forbidden. And you can see this in paragraph 26 of Rabbi Gestetner's first letter. And now, rationale number 2. Even though, as previously mentioned, that the halochos of Rabbeinu Tam consists of manias toiva, this was only allowed if the man had the option to move to another town where he could find people to lend him money or conduct transactions with him, and who were not aware of the halochos imposed on him from his previous town of residence. This provision of allowing halochos only if the man has the option to move to another town is stated in the Maharik, Rabbeinu Tam, Binyamin Zev, Lavush, Marashdam, the Gra, Tzemach Tzedek, Igros Moshe, Lavush Mordechai, and others. The cited sources are listed in the Hebrew letter 5028b, paragraph 9, linked below. However, this principle is not even applicable today in the modern world of social media and the internet, where the word gets out worldwide instantly, leaving the man no escape from his tarnished reputation, and therefore even manias toiva is not allowed today, and any halochos today are considered coercive action. And finally, rationale number 3. Even in the past, when halochos were allowed, it was forbidden to inform the man that the manias toiva, the withholding of favors, is being done to him on account of him withholding a get. Rather, it had to be done in such a way that he would figure it out on his own. This is stated in the Marashdam, in Yoredeah, Siman 106, and in Even Ezer, Siman 71. The halacha follows this opinion of the Marashdam, as is brought down in multiple poskim, including the Maharos Sasson, the Marchash, the Aderes Eliyahu, the Beis Shmuel, the Radvaz, Mishpat Tzedek, Maseis Moshe, and Rabbi Akiva Eger, all verified in paragraph 10 of Rabbi Gestetner's letter linked below. So it comes out that in modern days, when we see that the men are overtly pressured to issue a get, being publicly shamed as they are called such things as get refuser, the concept of halochos falls flat on its face, as these actions carried out by the charlatan rabbis and aguna enablers are clear-cut coercion, which is universally prohibited to employ in the category of moasalai. As I stated previously, Rabbi Gestetner doesn't shoot blanks. He cites multiple authentic poskim to back up the halacha, and at the same time, the charlatan fake rabbis and dayanim obscure from you these poskim to lure the masses in the sins of Eishes Ish. So there you have it. Stay tuned, everyone, for my next video, where I will be continuing this thread with rationale number 4 through number 8. Until then, thank you for watching, and see you all in the next video.